Welcome, everyone, to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Pasricha. It is Wednesday, September 3rd, and we are diving deep into the analysis of the Google antitrust ruling from yesterday. We've got a great discussion planned with everything you need to know with our editor-in-chief, Jessica Lessin, and our co-executive editor, Amir Efrati. We're also talking to antitrust lawyers about the ruling to get their take on what this could mean for other antitrust cases in motion right now. We're then going to bring on some more friends of the show, the co-founders of AI agents company Yutori, and we're also talking to stablecoin company Rain. There is a lot going on. Let's get right on into it. Yesterday, an antitrust judge dealt Google a big win in ruling that the company can keep its Chrome browser. It can keep making deals with Apple to be the default search engine on Safari, even though courts found last year that Google was operating an illegal monopoly. It is hard to overstate the significance of this deal for the tech sector. And last night, we put out a special edition of TITV, part of which we want to play for you today. It is a conversation our editor-in-chief, Jessica Lessin, had with co-executive editor Amir Efrati. And where I want to start this clip is where the two of them just start getting into how heavily the proliferation of generative AI impacted this decision. Here is that conversation.
Well, OpenAI won this case for Google, and it's pretty incredible that, most of the firms in Silicon Valley, including these big tech firms, they are run by, a certain brand of free market capitalists. And this decision, could not be more aligned with that view, which is that when you think about these kind of antitrust cases and issues, they're so backward looking that by the time they're done, the world has kind of changed. And Judge Mehta agreed with that, essentially, and almost raised the whole question of, like, why did we go through this entire process to begin with? The initial trial where he determined that Google was an illegal monopolist ended in November 2023. ChatGPT was a thing, but it was still in its relative infancy. Since then, it is obviously, jumped by an order of magnitude or more in terms of the people who are using it. But going back to what you were saying before about kind of big tech and kind of compounding advantages, it's not as if this new landscape is going to be the complete and utter decimation of Google. Its advantages persist. And I think part of this case definitely got into that, which is why Judge Mehta is saying, yes, you have to give OpenAI your search data and give them a better chance to compete, because Google is essentially taking its gigantic, greatest business ever created, canon and training it, toward AI in terms of bringing AI results and making Google search more like ChatGPT. It's able to do that, in ways that no other company really can. Now, there are limits to it. Obviously, ChatGPT is growing like a weed, and but so far, it has not crushed Google. So far, Google is taking these baby steps toward, having a better product that gives you the kind of results you want or you have come to expect, especially if you use ChatGPT. So they were going to be okay anyway. This decision just absolutely reinforces this idea that Google is going to be fine. And now they don't have all these distractions. If you think about if they would have had to divest things or kill the Apple deal, I mean, putting aside the insanity it would have been for Apple, it just means that they don't have to be distracted anymore. I don't even know if they're going to appeal this decision. It was so good for them.
So that's a good question. Yeah. There are some other cases, not as important, right? But talk through those. They're not totally out of the woods.
Yeah, there is an ad tech case, which is really all about Google's advantages in advertising technology and how it has essentially kind of tried to rig advertising auctions and find a way to get more and more margin from the way that it helps companies buy and sell inventory across the web. There is a serious thought of having to kind of spin out part of that business, but it is a part of the business that Google has been kind of deprecating anyway and is not as critical. This was really the case. This was really going to be the moment. And I think this is a huge crushing blow to the people who brought this case to begin with. I think companies like Microsoft are probably quite disappointed, given the decade and a half work that they put into this. But yeah, that's where
we've got to get Luther Lowe on the line. Maybe dial him up. And you're right. I mean, obviously the tech regulatory wheel will turn, and these massive companies. We were just talking in our edit meeting this morning about how do you regulate AI and how do you think about responsible AI and all these questions. The scrutiny is not going to go away, but let's shift gears a little bit and just talk about this moment of regulation in the Valley. I mean, we're waiting a Meta breakup case decision from the FTC. I think I've lost track. We need our regulatory tracker back on here. Under the Biden administration, there was this steady drumbeat of it was looking like everyone was headed for their big breakup case. Again, many of these obviously way predate the Trump administration, to your point. In general, the Trump administration seems like it's backed off on a lot of areas like privacy, but I kind of feel like there's a little bit of a collective sigh across all the big tech companies this evening. Because really also, I mean, when you talk to the CEOs of these companies, yes, this product launch and that product launch, but it's really the breakups that they know are at the end of the road, right? It's hard to imagine you're going to have $10-50 trillion companies eventually, right? So like this breakup notion does hang sort of existential, and it was kind of feeling like this, was going to be a little chip off the old Google. Or am I making too much of it? Right? Is each case individual here?
Well, even in the worst case scenario, it's a sort of thing where even if you do have to break off an Android or a Chrome, the existing Google shareholders get a piece of that, and they're going to do just fine. These are inherently valuable.
No CEO wants to be broken up. Yes, yeah. I mean that's the shareholders can make a case, but we're not. But it's a different landscape, right? When were these companies to be cleaved off, right? Or
yeah, for sure. And look, the Meta situation. I mean, these are deals that happened like 15 years ago, right, or longer. It just seems really hard to believe, especially given what we saw in the Google case, that suddenly a judge is going to require Meta to spin off WhatsApp or Instagram.
Yeah, or Instacart. Graham.
Yeah.
Tired. Yeah, and Meta has always felt quite confident about that case, but we'll see. I mean, I think these things tend to happen in waves a little bit, and so it's certainly one of many messages. Acquisitions are back, a little bit of collective relief. Before we go, because we've got stories to edit and publish shortly, but let's talk about Google. You said earlier that it's a sign sort of not to count them out. Maybe people have been too hard. Certainly, the stock has been at a relative discount to other big tech companies, maybe because of regulatory kind of overhang, Gemini inching along. What's your view? I mean, do you think that the public being both Wall Street and the sort of insider tech had turned too negative about Google and this changes that? Or do you still see reasons, to be concerned?
Well, there's the general concern around ChatGPT, and once it starts monetizing through advertising, what kind of a bite, if any, is that going to take out of Google? But no, I mean, Google is going to be a top 2, top 3 company in whatever this kind of combined AI and search paradigm is going to be. So they're here, and they're not going anywhere. So from that standpoint, it seems like they're going to be fine, and they're.
But will they be a monopoly? Right? I mean, I think that's and it's interesting because that brings us back. I remember, I don't know, maybe a year ago, 6 months ago, Brad Gerstner, the investor who was one of the first to sort of turn more negative on Google, right, and basically said, ChatGPT's here, Google's monopoly days are numbered. And therefore, you just can't value the company the same way.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. If you're looking at it from like a, price to earnings ratio kind of thing, yes, there are implications here. At the same time, Google Cloud is growing like gangbusters. It is not a massive, massive profit center, although it is getting better in that sense. You've got kind of Waymo in the background that's looming. If it could scale, that's
not in the background. I mean, by our office 20 times a day. Yeah.
Outside our office, but
20 times an hour, actually.
So, they do have all these other potential tailwinds, as analysts like to say. But you're right. I mean, the era of Google, completely owning the most lucrative, profitable, business or product that's ever been created, that is starting to change for sure. So from a valuation perspective, I think there's a bit of an adjustment, but man, all these like compounding effects of being who they are and acquiring what they've acquired and being able to subsidize these newer businesses for as long as they have. The fact that Google as a consumer company has been able to subsidize and slog it out on the cloud infrastructure side for as long as it has, to now becoming a player that is able to have OpenAI as a customer and Meta Platforms as a customer. That's
crazy.
That's incredible. It's an incredible thing.
I remember years ago when I think you broke the story, and I should add for our listeners, Amir has been at the information 12 years. We've been doing this. So we've written a lot of Google stories, but you had a story saying that Google had set some sort of goal. If it wasn't hit, they were going to shut down Google Cloud, right? There was that much skepticism and pressure. And I think to your point, its growth has been a major story of the last 3 months, and it's sort of strategic wrangling with some of its competitors. So, yeah. Well, I've always believed that you can't count Google out. So, but it is, which seems silly to say because it's Google, but it is interesting to see such a decisive win. I mean, I'm also interested, if you briefly indulge me my media criticism hat too, how outlets have been covering it this evening, because many outlets like the New York Times were quick to just point to the search licensing or search data sharing as, a blow delivered by the Justice Department. And I mean, to me, as soon as I got a text from Martin Peers in New York saying decisions out, I just said Apple Chrome. Like, those are the two things that matters, right? Does it keep Chrome? Does it keep the Apple deal? And such a clear victory. So it's interesting. I think you have a range. We're in a moment of a wide range of media coverage. And some people will be quick to point out, again, and we should, those areas where it's not just business as usual for Google, but as with most things tech, it's really a question of what's needle moving and what the company is very happy to change to make the case go away. So as you said, I think Sundar should buy Sam a beer tonight, or 20, because
Tim Cook should also.
Tim Cook too.
Yeah.
Big thanks, big emoji prayer, going back and forth on the iMessage. But it's will be very interesting to see, if we get some more reaction from Google. Given there's continued litigation, they probably aren't going to be beating their chest, but it was a significant deal, one that was a long time coming, both in the verdict and now in the decision and the remedies. So, Amir, thanks so much for joining. We should keep the Jessica and Amir show going on TITV. There's actually been a request for us just to debate each other, since we have some healthy disagreements on these topics.
We'll bring Martin Peers in here, and it'll be an explosion.
It will just be boisterous.
That was Jessica Lessin and Amir Efrati. Well, we are continuing our coverage of the Google ruling, and I want to bring on someone with a background in antitrust law. Joel Thayer is the president of the Digital Progress Institute in Washington, D.C. Joel, it is great to have you. Welcome to TITV.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So let's get to the ruling. Did it surprise you?
Not really. I think we got exactly what we expected. We got a very strong liability case and a somewhat measured remedy case. I mean, I was a bit surprised on the default side, but overall, it made perfect sense. It looks like the judge was definitely trying to take a narrow focus on the specific facts of the case and try to address the remedy the best way he saw. So no surprises here.
What did you make of the idea that this ruling was very forward-looking. I think we think about antitrust cases as looking in the past, and they take a long time to get through the courts eventually. The mention of AI here was explicitly a mention of, hey, we're taking the future into consideration. Did that part surprise you?
Not really. Judges typically do a bit of forecasting. You kind of have to. When looking at antitrust cases, it is an economic it is based on economic principles at its base. So you do have to look at the market, and you also have to look at when the claims were lodged, when the alleged offenses happened, and whether or not those alleged offenses are still exist in a current market, and whether or not your remedy is going to impact future growth of a market. So that wasn't all that surprising to me.
So the AI piece, I mean, there was no sort of reflection that you have there. I'll tell you what. So rather than talking about the AI, because we just had Jessica Lessin and Amir Efrati talking on the show about that, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about actually a little bit more is, given your antitrust background, we have these other cases too against Apple, against Meta, against Amazon. And what we're trying to figure out here in the newsroom is what this ruling could mean for those cases. Did this ruling tell you anything about which way the judge might rule on those cases coming out?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe for the tech companies, especially when it comes to a specific remedy that the court did grant, which was the data sharing remedy, which will allow smaller competitors to basically leverage some of the infrastructure that exists from the big tech players to grow and actually scale and be able to compete. So what it signaled to me was that these judges are starting to recognize how these markets operate and what is the actual widget being sold here and what's actually being harbored. So what my read of this and that particular remedy being granted demonstrates clearly to me that we are no longer living in a world where big tech cannot be touched. We are now looking at judges are looking at them far more critically. So if I were a betting man, I would say that I would probably bet on the government on those cases over big tech.
But say more about the data sharing piece. I mean, why was it that the data sharing remedy indicated to you what will happen in those cases? I want to unpack that.
Sure. So for a very long time, without boring your audience, we operated on what's called the consumer welfare standard for antitrust, and that basically suggests that there are certain aspects of the market that have to benefit the consumer. So we're actually okay with, three companies ruling them all, provided that the consumer gets some sort of benefit out of it. And typically how it's been reviewed is through price regulation, or at least price moderation. So
right.
If
this is the pricing competition angle, essentially.
That's right. So
right.
Does the monopolist is able to control the price of a product? So
right.
The question with the tech companies is like, well, what happens when the price is free? So if the price is set at zero, I mean, doesn't the consumer always benefit? It looks like there is going to be a significant turn on that, because now it's starting to look at the other aspects of the consumer welfare standard, which the consumer welfare standard also stands for making sure that monopolists can't harm innovation, and that the outputs themselves cannot be controlled by particular firms.
So other aspects like
promotion of innovation, inhibiting innovation, or quality of the product, for instance. So there was a lot of things that were getting discussed in this case that I thought were very pertinent to a lot of these other cases. One is that it looked at the quality of the search results based off of Google's monopolization. It turns out that the court was not at all sold on the idea that Google's monopoly was important to maintain the integrity of the quality of search. In fact, the data sharing arrangement basically says that you actually have to allow other companies that may do this better than you to scale upwards and actually compete with you, so the consumer can get better benefits out of this. And he even cites the consumer welfare standard as his justification. So that is a monumental shift. And I think that is something that's going to reverberate into these other cases, because it's the same analyses that you're seeing in the Meta case. It's the same analyses that you're seeing in the App Store case with respect to Apple. So again, I think this is going to have a much bigger impact than most people are probably giving it credit for.
Great. Well, Joel, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think this story is far from over. We're going to see all these other cases play out. And so as we do, we're going to bring you back on the show to walk us through some more of your analysis. That is Joel Thayer, the president at the Digital Progress Institute. Okay. Well, it is always exciting to see when teams of big tech talent leave their companies to start their own new ventures. That is exactly what our next guests did last year. Devi, Parikh, and Abhishek Das left Meta in 2024 to found AI agents company Yutori, which raised $15 million a few months ago. The company aims to build what it calls an AI chief of staff, and it is backed by all sorts of big names, including Conviction and Felicis. Devi and Abhishek Das, I'm to call you, you said. Welcome to you both. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, look, I'll decide who gets to explain the most fundamental question, which is, what is it that Yutori does? Someone take it away.
Yeah, maybe starting with the name itself. So Yutori is a Japanese word. It means a sense of mental spaciousness. So as an example, if I leave from home early to get somewhere early and I have time to take a breath, look around, that feeling is the feeling of Yutori. And the reason we adopted it as our company name is because we're looking to build AI agents, AI assistants that invoke the feeling of Yutori in our users. That's the product experience that we want to deliver.
Okay, and how is it that you're going to do that?
Yeah, so specifically what we're going after are AI agents that can reliably do everyday digital tasks on the web towards an AI chief of staff for everyone. So anything that we currently open a browser for in our day-to-day lives that can broadly be categorized as digital labor. So anything from like reservations, scheduling appointments, coordinating with people, having to constantly monitor websites for tracking news, or campground reservations, and so on. All of that is within scope of what we're going after.
And keep going.
I was just going to add that we're taking a fairly opinionated stance on how we get there. So the kinds of agents that we're building, they don't take over your device or your browser. They work in the background on the web. And unlike how a lot of the AI assistants today work, for example, ChatGPT, that's reactive and only respond when you ask it a question. We're trying to rethink that and ask the question of, okay, what if these agents were proactive and you didn't even have to ask?
Okay. And so, David, that was sort of my next question for you, was that, as it relates to AI assistants and attachments to browsers, for example, we know that OpenAI is working on a browser. Comet from Perplexity is a tool that has been getting a lot of traction. And so Das is saying that you're not going with the browser, you're going with something in the background. Why is that better than a browser, in your opinion?
I think for a few different reasons. One is the browser is in your device. And so anything that it's doing is happening on your device, sort of in the foreground, in your face, so to speak. Whereas a lot of what we are going after is if these agents can just be in the background, making progress on this task while you are living your life, that's how sort of we get to delivering Yutori. There's also some technical challenges that come up if you're in the browser. For example, if you want multiple agents to be doing multiple things in parallel for you, that's just much harder to do if they're all sort of in your tab, in your browser. If it's a long task that's going to take a while, or if they're sort of always on persistent agents, if you shut your laptop and walk away, what happens to these agents if they're in your browser?
Okay, so Das mentioned that reservations was one thing. What are the other types of things that you hope Yutori can do for us?
So things like monitoring information, that whenever something happens in the world, let me know. That if there's news about X topic, or if the price of something drops below threshold, if campground reservations open up, let me know. And that's the first product that we launched a couple of months ago. In the future, not just monitoring information, but also taking action on it. So if the price drops below threshold, go ahead and buy it for me. Or if this becomes available, make that reservation. Taking actions would be a natural follow-up from there, and then getting closer and closer to an assistant, a chief of staff that is just taking care of more and more of your digital chores.
And Das, what is it that makes Yutori different? Because there are a ton of different companies working on exactly that use case in the background. I hear this example a lot on the show: is price drops, you buy, you sell, right? Reservation opens, you book. Flight opens, it comes down to this threshold, you book. I mean, what makes Yutori different?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on that there's basically a ton of agentic companies out there that are promising the world. And then when you try it the first time, at least the experience that I've had is many of them don't quite work. And it is very much top of mind for us to not be the 101st company that's making the same mistake.
Right.
Like one thing that's different in how our team is organized is that we are sort of innovating in a full stack manner, across the board, from like training our own models to do some of these tasks, as well as innovating on what these interfaces look like that make interacting
So
with
you have your own models.
We post-train our own models. We don't train them from scratch, but we post-train our own browser use models. Yeah.
Right. And Devi, I mean, we should say both of you are former employees from Meta. You were both researchers there, from what I understand. So what was it that made you sort of believe that you couldn't build something like this within Meta, that you wanted to do it on your own?
So I think a couple of reasons. One is we are rethinking what the interface with the web looks like. And that requires a certain sort of just thinking from first principles, thinking from scratch, thinking from a clean slate, which is something that's just much harder to do in a larger company that has all of the baggage associated with it from its prior success. So that was one. The second was also just from personal motivations. All three founders, we've worked together for a decade. We've done some of our best work together. We've talked about starting a company together, and we've been all starting to feel saturated in our roles at Meta. And so that was sort of another motivation to go do something of our own. Yeah.
Abhishek, sorry, I keep wanting to call you by your first name, Abhishek. Before the show, Abhishek told me he wanted to go by Das, so we're calling you Das. Das. One of the questions I had for you is Meta has gone through a lot of restructuring. We've written that they've restructured their AI team for the fourth time in 6 months now. We obviously have Alexander Wang coming in. They're bringing in a lot of talent. What do you make of the restructuring that Meta is going through? And do you think you could do what you're doing now within the new structure at all?
Yeah, good question. I will probably deflect this to Devi. She had a
Devi, we're coming to you.
Yeah. So I think, Meta has been like, this is one of everyone's favorite topics right now, right? Everything that's going on in MSL, in the TBD lab. But Meta has been investing in AI going back all the way at least to 2013. Meta has done several experiments of how it structures and organizes its AI work, both from a research standpoint, sort of exploratory bottom-up, curiosity-driven research, more focused research, in terms of how to bring this research to products, having a centralized AI org, decentralizing the talent to product groups, and so on. So this is another experiment. Good things have come out of the previous experiments. I'm excited to see what comes out of this one. It is not clear to me that we would be able to do this in the new structure. I think the new structure is still meant to sort of push on the foundational capabilities and sort of having a small group of people going after the whole stack of training our models, thinking through the product experiences, designing those, and shipping it out every few months. I think my guess would be it's still hard to do something like that in that structure. And that's probably not what Meta is optimizing for, right? It's going after other things. Yeah.
Devi, what did you make of Meta's partnership with Midjourney?
To be honest, it was a little bit of mixed feelings, because while I was at Meta, I had worked on a lot of the image generation technology. I left last year. And so, it would have been nice for sort of in-house Meta models to have continued living even after I left.
Right.
That was interesting to see from the outside that it is now betting on external models to bring that in. Yeah.
But did thinking about the work that you did at Meta and now thinking about sort of this new era of talent that has been ushered in, I mean, what do you think was the mindset there? I mean, was it literally just we need to go faster? We've written about how Meta it was a little slower in terms of getting AI traction with its own models. What do you think their thinking was there?
And these are all guesses, because I left in March of last year, but my guess would be that it was a bit of just wanting to shake everything up and sort of just start it from scratch, wanting to keep it very small and very focused, as opposed to sort of large organizations that had been spun up in the past. And there was probably interest in wanting to bring in talent from the outside, just to sort of have that melting pot of ideas from different places and not just have in-house ideas that Meta has been working on. So that would be my guess.
Great. Well, look, it's very interesting to see yet another team building in the AI agent space. I think we could talk a lot longer about the data component here and the corporate data wars that are going on. And so next time you come on, we'll make sure to dig into some of those meaty topics. But I really appreciate both of you coming on. That is Devi and Das from Yutori.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, stablecoins have been all the rage lately, and another company in the space raised a big funding round last week. Rain raised $58 million in a funding round led by Sapphire Ventures to build its stablecoin debit card technology. The company has a big deal with Visa. Its biggest market is Latin America. And I want to bring on Rain CTO Charles Yoo-Naut to talk more about where he sees this space going. Charles, it's great to have you. Welcome to TITV.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So stablecoin debit card technology, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually not on the debit rails. We're on the credit rails.
Credit. Okay, my apologies.
Yeah, no worries. So we allow our customers to be able to spend against their stablecoin balances on chain anywhere that Visa is accepted. So stablecoins are a great way to send value across the world instantly for fractions of a penny. But once you get the stablecoin, there traditionally was very limited things that you can do with it. So we unlock all of that usability by making them spend on the Visa network.
Got it. So the idea here is that if I'm going to the bodega and I want to pay for my chicken parm sandwich, whatever it is I get, I can pay with my Visa card as long as I have a USDC balance to be able to pay for. Is that the idea?
Exactly. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of great stablecoin use cases globally, from remittances to hedging against inflation, cross-border payments, but actually being able to spend it every day on all these daily expenses, that's been missing. So that's what we've been working on for the past 4 years.
So you actually Rain gives them a Visa card.
Well, we're a B2B2B, B2B2C platform. So we have APIs where our customers can go and launch products. So we power over 100 card programs globally for partners like Nuvei, Avalanche, Dakota, Cast. So our partners are the ones that are issuing the cards to their end users, but we're providing all the infrastructure to do that.
Okay, and so it's the blockchains that are issuing the cards, or it's the
Our customers
stores?
are pretty diverse. Like we work with blockchains, we work with fintechs, neobanks, global platforms, remittance players. So
Give us an example of a customer.
Yeah, so one of our customers, for example, Avalanche is a blockchain that we work with. So they have an app that they issue cards to their end users, but then we also support a customer like Takenos in South America, where they're issuing cards to contractors and freelancers and consumers in Argentina and Bolivia.
And I'm not familiar with that as a financial institution, is it? Or
it's a neobank.
Neobank, okay.
So there's a bunch of neobanks that are building on top of stablecoin rails instead of building on top of traditional banking rails. Because if you have a stablecoin balance in a wallet with a card attached to it, you're reaching 90% of the functionality that most people use banks for.
Okay, so you've got a bank, call it, and you don't have any banks in the U.S. from what I understand just yet. Is that right?
Yeah, we actually, our entire infrastructure is completely on chain. So we don't work with any banks anywhere in our flow of funds.
Okay.
We're one of the only issuers to settle with Visa 7 days a week in stablecoins. We have on-chain lenders that we borrow from, and then all of our customers repay us back on-chain. And we're the sponsor of these programs. So there's not a BIN sponsor that's a bank backing these cards.
Right, but I mean, in the Latin America example, it's a neobank that is issuing the card essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you got this neobank issuing the card. I have a stablecoin balance, and I'm going to the bodega to get my chicken parm. And I mean, I guess the thing that I'm trying to figure out is why can't Visa do this themselves?
Yeah, well, Visa is a network, right? Visa doesn't actually do any of the infrastructure to do the issuing directly to customers. So, there's partners like Marqeta or Lithic that you might have heard of that people go to issue cards, and then there's BIN sponsors like, a Cross River or a Lead Bank that actually provide the BIN sponsorship. So with Rain, we're kind of both of those. We're the BIN sponsor and we're the issuer. And Visa relies on dozens and dozens of partners globally to actually issue cards with.
Right. And more what I was getting at was why couldn't credit card companies, broadly speaking, do it themselves?
Yeah, I think that, stablecoin space is pretty new. And customers traditional credit card companies just hadn't really looked at the stablecoin space and this emerging use case. They're more risk averse, they're slower. We were early to realizing the demand and potential of stablecoins, and now a lot of those traditional companies are coming to us to partner and use our infrastructure, because we really have been spending the last 4 years developing this and working closely with our partners on what the market needs.
Right. And the last question for you. I mean, I get that the idea here is to make it as easy as using a credit card, and transact in stable coins. But, we seem to be able to use our credit cards pretty readily. And so what exactly is the advantage here of paying with a stable coin that is then linked to a dollar, which is what I pay already in my credit cards?
Yeah. So a lot of it is about unlocking already use cases that people are using stablecoins for. So, for example, remittance use cases. So if you live in a high income country and you have family in like a lower income country, traditionally you have to go through, MoneyGram or Western Union and pay a lot of fees and wait, multiple days for it to settle. Versus with a stablecoin, you can send it instantly to your family member wherever they are. It's traceable on chain. They'll get it, in seconds. You'll pay very little for it. But then once they get it, what can they do with it? If you just gave them a stablecoin, they'll be like, okay, that's great. I can't actually do anything with it locally. But if you give them a stablecoin with a card attached to it, instantly that's a much better experience. The utility is there. So that's like one use case. We see countries where there's a lot of inflation and people want to be able to save in dollars. They just can't go walk into the local bank and open up a dollar bank account. The best way for them to actually get access to dollars and save in a more stable currency is to buy stable coins. And instead of just saving it, you can actually now spend against that as well. So those are the types of use cases that we're already seeing our customers use and people in the market use. And we're just providing this layer of utility that makes that even more powerful use case.
Right. Well, it's definitely an interesting idea. And I have to say, I haven't yet used USDC to buy a chicken
I'll
parm.
send you some.
But well, send me the chicken parm. I want that. And the card would be nice too. But anyway, Charles, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. That is Charles, the CTO at Rain. Well, that does it for today's show. A reminder that we are live on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank Amazon Web Services, who is our presenting sponsor for this production. And I want to thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate your viewership. I'm already excited for our next show tomorrow. And so until then, bye-bye for now.